Hello everyone, my name is Jayas and welcome back to my channel. As of writing this, we are a little under 2 weeks away from February 2025, and I just realized how close we are to one of the first deadlines of my goals for this year, publishing my Webtoon. This story has been in the works for quite some time now, and honestly, I'm super excited to share some of the process with you. We'll talk character creation, storylines, without giving too much away, because I do want you guys to eventually have something to look forward to actually reading, of course, and why I decided on making a webtoon even before I found out about the contest, because this idea has been through quite a few iterations in my mind. I have the characters, and if you've been following my journey on TikTok, which who knows what's happening to that app, then you're probably already aware of at least the premise. What I haven't posted about yet is that I actually sat down last year and finished the outline for it. I need to tweak it a little bit now, but it is done. I had originally planned to get at least the first few chapters out last year, but never got the time to work on it due to needing to take a step back from everything after my cat unfortunately passed away. Still, I went into this new year wanting to get at least one of my original projects actually out to the public and not just stuck in this semi-concept phase. During the first week of the year, I stumbled across a video, well, several videos, talking about the Webtoon 2025 contest. In case I am somehow your first video learning about this, let me tell you a little about it first. If you are 13 years or older and you have a Webtoon account in good standing, you have the opportunity to submit a minimum of the first 3 chapters of your own original, currently unpublished outside of the internet, and not contracted comic to Webtoon between March and May 2025. You can submit to one of a variety of genres, including but not limited to romance, drama, action, fantasy, horror, and comedy. You can submit a maximum of 1 series per category for a total of 4 series, and power to you if you decide you want to do that. I'll just be sticking with the 1. I simplified this a lot for my purpose of this video, so I heavily encourage you to go to the link in the description that will bring you to Webtoon submission guidelines and contest rules. There are things like additional submission dates for finalists, as well as other rules that I just didn't go over in this section. And if you're looking for some more in-depth videos on this topic, I do recommend checking out Indie Burn and Pantheon Talks, who have given extensive advice and breakdowns that are extremely helpful to me. I'll also be linking their videos below in the description, so they're easy to find. So I actually created the characters before the story existed. Normally when I'm writing, I try to set the story first and figure out what I want to tell. Then comes the world that the story needs to be set in. I find that once I have the scope of the story, everything else comes easy or easier for me. Obviously, that won't be the case for everyone. Some people start with the characters and build everything else around that. I don't think there's a wrong way to do this process. It's kind of like the difference between pantsers and plotters, if you're familiar with those writing terms. You just gotta find what works best for you. And for me, normally that means starting with the story, because I tend to be more plot-driven and plot-focused, even in the pieces of media that I consume to enjoy. But like I said at the start of this section, that didn't happen this time. The way that I first came up with the concepts of these characters was from a Twitter post back in like 2022? Like mid-2022. I'm gonna try my hardest to find it again, but essentially it was asking for like pastel x dark aesthetic, but the pastel character likes to drink only black coffee, and the dark character, it really likes like some fruity, milky boba drink. I freaking love concepts like that, so I drew these 2 behind me as a joke. And as I was drawing, I got this idea that maybe they're talking one day about work or whatever at some coffee shop, and he's just enamored with the way she talks about her mundane job, and it somehow gets him thinking about his in a different light. That got me thinking, ooh, okay, that's cute, but what jobs would they have? I was also playing with the idea of grumpy ex sunshine and affectionate ex touch stars as well, because I love those tropes too. And I think while looking at the colors, I just got this sudden image of this being like life and love versus like death and grief. And as I was figuring out their outfits, I kind of settled on them being a grumpy Cupid and cutesy Grim Reaper couple. And then I was hit by this idea of, what if we had these 2 deity-like beings and we just focused on them talking about their jobs to each other all the time? Except I wanted to change how each one does their job. So first, we have our cutesy Grim Reaper, Kari. Though she has the title of Grim Reaper, each of the deities have like different focuses within them, like divisions. And I mean deities like a group of them, like an entire system, because at this point it has expanded a lot. But for the Grim Reaper specifically, Kari is not one of your typical scythe-wielding, spooky, skeletal figures. Okay, she does still wield a scythe, but that's just because I thought the concept was cool, and I do plan on having a little bit of action in this mostly drama romance-based story. But Kari is a Grim Reaper who specializes in grief and relationships. This means she isn't in charge of bringing souls to the afterlife. She does not touch those. Instead, her job includes leading what I call those left behind through their grieving process. So when something ends for you, like a relationship dies, Kari first severs your soul tie to it with her scythe. Then her presence stays with you while she untangles it from you until you're ready to move on. Though it can be a sad and somewhat lengthy process at times, Kari absolutely loves her job. Her favorite part is when her person finally lets go of their end of the soul tie because she knows they're off to better things. Despite being a Reaper, Kari finds the endings of things to be so beautiful as they create a space for something new, hopeful, and exciting to grow. So when I was really settling on her character design, I wanted to keep her very casual and light in clothing because she's dealing with a lot of potentially heavy things. As a grief specialist, Kari is also attuned to your mental health and can access any memories you have that are associated with the event to aid in your healing. Her hair is locked because I wanted to send this sort of subtle message about hair holding memories. As a Black artist and knowing how much history is behind our hair care and hairstyles, I thought giving her locks would also be cool because for those of you who don't know, a common practice when you decide to lock your hair is to occasionally go and get it retwisted. So your hair is growing in one way, and as new hair inevitably also continues to grow, you retwist it to not only help maintain shape in the direction that you want your hair to grow in, but to also keep your hair from loosening, potentially unraveling, or causing breakage. Not everyone feels the need to do this, but in Kari's case, she will, because I plan on it being an artistic way of showing not only how well she's doing, but also how well her charges are doing. Because again, she's kind of tied in with them. Her hair also changes in length, hinting at how long of a process they have to go until her charge releases the soul tie. She wears a lot of black because I wanted ties to her being a Grim Reaper still, but I also wanted to throw in these purple and dark pink colors in some of her clothing. They're kind of supposed to add in some colors and play off her hair a little bit, but the image that came to my mind when I was choosing these colors was of the coloration of bruises. We think of them as these nasty, painful, sometimes very ugly things, and sometimes they are, especially when we touch it, but eventually those things fade, and you might still remember feeling pain when you touched it before, but it doesn't hurt in that moment anymore. And adding those colors, simple as it seems, really gave me some insight into the crux of her job, which is helping to heal those bruises we get on our hearts sometimes. And speaking of bruises on our hearts, that brings us to our grumpy Cupid, Raz. His job is actually a little more traditional than Kari's, in that he does what you'd expect a Cupid to do. At least he would if he didn't hate his job.
You must be right. This is an amethyst, except an amethyst is big and strong. This one is not the best example. Something is clearly wrong.
You'd think that since he's always dealing with love, he'd be happier. But all he sees is how quickly people move on from one obsession to the next without caring about what they've left behind. When he first started, he was super excited about getting to work with quick love crushes, as it was fast-paced and required a lot of technical skill with his bow. But after a while, he realized he hated how many repeat targets he had, and he switched to the long-term division, hoping it would help him shake the icky feeling he had seeing his targets move on so quickly. This is because, similar to Kari and how other deity jobs will work in this world, Cupids can also feel their target's emotions toward their objects of affection. In Raz's case, however, these feelings started to take a toll on him and made him question if there was a point to creating something that, in his mind, wasn't meant to last. I was really trying to balance his character design so that he looked grumpy at times, but definitely still looked like he had the potential to be charismatic as well. So he's got this somewhat permanent business casual vibe, because I think if he had a normal job, he'd be the type to never relax. Always on the grind, always ready for a meeting, takes himself a little too seriously, but he is also good at his job, and there used to be some parts of it that he loved about that. So I played around with these concepts of tattoos and piercings for him to have, because they'd be things that he could kind of cover or try to minimize, but they'd ultimately still be there to remind him of how he used to feel. I won't spoil all of his tattoos just yet, but some of my favorites are his world map tattoo, which lets him travel pretty much wherever he wants on a whim, and the very angsty stitch on his right arm that separates that world map from his eternity tattoo. His job outfit is pink techwear. Again, at the start of the story, he might be a bit of a mess, but in his prime, I wanted to show off how good he was at his last job. Dealing with love kind of calls for him to be ready for anything. So he needed fits that were weather resistant, kind of baggy so he can move around quickly, and with many pockets so that he can bring anything he might need to help his previous charges find the love they're looking for. I was so tempted to put him in darker colors as well, and I do introduce some different pink themed palettes for him in these later drawings of him, but I really thought the idea of keeping him in these bright pink colors would lead to something interesting for his story. Because he's in these bright colors. It's impossible to not be noticing it, and it's reminiscent of candy that you can feel sick after eating too much of. And that's obviously where he is right now. But I'm still fighting to keep him in light clothing because I think him being grumpy, but still wearing pastel colors does a good job at hinting that maybe he is still fighting for his own belief in love and the work he used to do. Honestly, the more I got to play around with the duality of his personality, the more fun I started having with his and Kari's dynamic. At some point, this story became more than being about just the two of them gabbing about their jobs, though it obviously still focuses on them figuring out their own relationship. As I'm writing this, I'm realizing how backwards I really worked on this story, or at least it was backwards for me. But the more things I kept dreaming up for this progressing couple, the more I realized how expansive their story could be. Originally, this wasn't even going to be a webtoon. I was just going to keep randomly drawing them, and then when I actually got the story idea for it, I considered making it into a novel. But as I just explained with the character creation, there's so much that I wanted to convey visually that made a traditional novel, and by that I mean, only words on a page, a bit of an improper way of telling this story. Because the crux of this really is about love, grief, and relationships. The urban fantasy world that Kari and Raz are in deals very heavily with this idea of human emotion and divine, or at least somewhat otherworldly influence on that. Outside of our two main characters and their human charges, I'll have to introduce you guys to those four in a separate video. The main external conflict of the story revolves around this thing called the veil, which separates the mortal and divine realms starting to decay. This decay leads to all sorts of chaos. Spirits that shouldn't exist are popping up, human lives are being drastically affected by this, and even the deities are struggling to maintain balance. So Kari and Raz are kind of inadvertently thrown together to fix it, but their approach is, well, let's just say it's not always aligned. Their partnership starts off rocky, but as they work together, they start to not only uncover deeper truths about the cause of the veil's decay, but also navigate common complexities such as human emotions, attachment styles, mental health, and the search for purpose. I mentioned needing to tweak some of the outline, but I don't plan on largely altering anything. The story has its ending already set, and I have a good sense of how many chapters I'll need for each section of it. One of my favorite aspects of the story is how it's going to explore different forms of love, and how each of those things are not only tied to grief, but sometimes even inspired by it. We are focusing on the romance side of love, but there's elements of it that will touch on the other forms in the human cast. It's a pretty layered story, and I'm really excited to see how readers will interpret it. Also, there are some plot points I cannot wait for you guys to see. Alright guys, if you made it this far into the video, first of all, thank you. And here's a secret little passcode for you to respond to so I can give you all of my undying love in the comments. Whether you've already made a webtoon before, are making one now, or thinking about making one, what is the biggest challenge you anticipate about making a webtoon? This can be either art or writing related, since it really is a blend of both. I talked in my last art commentary video about how I would have to learn backgrounds this year, and it's looking like I'm gonna have to really focus on that next month. I'm not going to worry about having everything perfect. I recognize that a lot of this is probably going to be learning on the go for me, just as all webtoon creators are kind of doing. But I need to get some solid background concepts done so it makes things easier as I not only prepare to submit to this contest, but also continue the storyline until completion. This contest has been a great motivator. Maybe it's just me, but there's something about a deadline that really lights a fire underneath me and makes me fast track my growth as an artist. I don't recommend that for everything, obviously, because too many deadlines or time-limited activities can lead to anxiety and/or burnout, and we're promoting taking care of ourselves here. But what I mean to say is that this is allowing me an opportunity to not only work harder, but smarter when it comes to developing everything. I'm more than likely going to switch from Procreate to Clip Studio Paint again, just so I don't have to worry about things like layer limitations and can really use the integration of 3D modeling to its full advantage. Just remember though that pen theory exists, you guys, so if my art looks a little different in the next video, that's probably why. I gotta rediscover my Clip Studio art style. It's been years. I'll probably also touch on how I went about studying Webtoons in a way in order to outline this one. But let me know if there's anything you'd like to see. Webtoons can be intimidating, but we can break them down together. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. And I hope you'll consider subscribing so that we can see more of each other in the future. As I said before, I'll talk more about my other characters, the actual humans in my cast, in the next video about them. Maybe we'll even get into creating some character reference sheets because right now I only have like one view or angle on everyone, and a reference sheet would be super helpful. Speaking of reference sheets, if you have a character that you're looking to get a visual for, my commissions are currently open on VGen. I'm working on trying to get verified on there right now, and I have so many ideas for new packages in the future outside of just reference sheets. So make sure to follow me there so you can get immediate updates on when I drop new things. Also, I just have to add that I am completely floored by the growth on my channel and how you guys have really come out in just a few weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was planning on thanking you guys in my next video, this video, for 200. Also, shout out to Artboat9462 for not only telling me that I had reached 200, but also somehow coincidentally being my 200 follower. But as of me writing this, I'm almost at like 5 somehow. I can't even wrap my head around that. I was fully prepared for the slow growth that everyone talks about when starting their YouTube channel. And this isn't to say that I might not experience that, but I really wanted to thank you first, almost 500, for being here. I hope you enjoy my silly little behind the scenes shorts of my cozy game personas, as well as my actual Let's Plays and animatics, which I am currently working on another one. If you are a Love and Deep Space fan, be on the lookout. But I look forward to creating more with you guys, continuing to branch out in terms of the videos I make on here, and of course, building this webtoon with all of you, because we are definitely going to be focusing on that a lot in order to help me meet that first submission deadline of March 10th. So mark your calendars for that, especially if you're also looking to enter. And if creating a webtoon was also one of your goals this year, or you were even thinking about signing up, good. I think you should do it. I'm encouraging you somewhat aggressively to do it. So join us. Let's make a webtoon together. If you're as excited about Kari, Raz, and the Veil's mystery as I am, stick around. There's so much more to come. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment with that secret thing we talked about. Until next time, keep creating, keep challenging yourself, and I'll see you next time in our next creative adventure.